G'day guys, if you're watching this, there is a chance that you can just whip over and watch my other version of this, which is for members only. But if you're watching this, it's probably still able to be accessed for free. It's going to have a lot more information than this one. If you just want to have a brief overview, then this one's the one to watch. Otherwise, if you want some in-depth with some information and diagrams, go watch the other one. That's why this is going to be a bit strange when I'm about to start again, but this is going to be deleted once my membership program is up and running. G'day guys, it's Galvin from the Coaching Company New Zealand. What we're going to discuss in this one is P0500, which relates to the vehicle speed sensor. The job was with a 186 Crown, and I'm going to show that the information which relates to the 6-speed LS430s as well from the Toyota spec sheets isn't quite correct. There's some other stuff missing. Okay, the full description with all the information is going to be in my membership one, but this one's going to give you a bit of an insight and show that there's more to it than meets the eye, and this is why some people are having problems solving this particular code. Right, let's get into it. P0500 shows on the spec sheet, and now the spec sheet is from Toyota. Okay, it's out of their repair manual that is supplied, and it shows we've got a vehicle speed sensor here on the output shaft of the transmission. Got a little wiring diagram there, and shows how to use the tester. So you can do it without a tester with some easy tools. Check some resistances, check some speeds. Okay, also got a little waveform there, which funnily enough I do in my video as well. Right, let's get into it. Today I am sitting in a UZS 186 Crown, and what we're going to talk about is the speed sensors into the ECU. In particular, this is going to be about P0500, and it applies to the 3UZ range of cars. So, a little bit of a backstory. I have a customer who has contacted me with a Crown. It's come into the country, car yard car, and it doesn't run like it should. Well, it keeps throwing a fault code, an engine fault code for a P0500. So I happen to have this Crown. We've had it in the cam out. I've had to sort the cruise control, which my mistake. I chose, well, a communication error. We put a non-radar cruise in it when it's got radar cruise. So what I'm doing right now is I've got my scan tool sitting here, Jason's scan tool. I've stolen it off him. We've got it's a little Foxwell AutoMaster Pro, and it is presently running an auto scan on this car, checking everything. And it's brought up 0 faults, none at all, which is really good. I'm happy about that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go for a drive. We're going to go drive it now, and we're going to look at the speed sensor signals going into the ECU. We have a speed sensor on the back of the transmission. Now that's the normal reason for a P0500, and that's the output speed or the vehicle speed it's used. We have a turbine speed at the front of the transmission. Now it's the same sensor, so on these ones you can take it out, put it in the back and swap them over, see if the fault moves, and that'll tell you if it's the sensor. And then we have the rest of the car that also generates speed through the ABS, and we've got a signal from the rest of the car communicated back to the ECU. So the ECU sees a vehicle speed, it sees NT and NO. and they will be in different parts of your live data depending on the ECU and the vehicle you're working on. So I was working on it was an LS430, and it didn't reflect everything in the engine side of things, in the engine module. It didn't read one of them, but it was in the transmission module. This one happens to be all combined. So I've got a vehicle speed, which at present there is none. We're not moving. It's not a fault, I'm parked. And then I'm just going to find the other two. So you can see we've got NT, and it's sitting at 700 RPM. That's because the engine is running at idling about 700 RPM. So that is the turbine speed into the engine ECU. And then we've got speed NO, that is the output shaft. That is not moving. I've just made a custom list with just those 4 speeds on. If we can see that. Engine speed, vehicle speed, NO and NT. And we're going to attempt to drive it, and we're going to attempt to watch those speeds and not crash. Okay, so looking at these speeds, we've got NT and NO. Turbine speed and the output speed. That's because of the changes in the gearboxes, why they're different, but they are both registering. And then we've got the vehicle speed, and that is actually quite a lot different to what we're getting on the Speedo. We're about 76, so it's about 6 k's wrong. Not completely unusual. And of course we've got the engine speed, how fast the engine's actually running. So this car is registering all the speeds like it should, and there is no fault code. So that is my known good point. So I'm popping home, and we're going to fit the problem ECU to this car and see if the motor vehicle performs like it should. Now if you watch my other video on the cruise control, I'm going to see if that ECU is also a radar cruise ECU. So we may lose cruise control, but it still shouldn't affect what I'm trying to do with this particular job. I was also asked about the shift quality on this one, and there's definitely a little bit of a bump at low speed. To all you guys with crowns, a little bit of info would be helpful. Does your crown start when the key is in the holder? This one doesn't. I check with the customer, and it's always done that. So that'd be helpful if you could let me know if yours does start with that in the holder. You see the dashboard is just going crazy. So I'm fitting up the new ECU, or the replacement ECU, and this is just putting in the immobilizer. So it's aligning the immobilizer with the vehicle. It's telling me it's 656. We probably should reset that because it's not 656. And it also does a check on the vehicle. So it does a diagnostic on it and checks a whole lot of stuff, and that's there's checking in there as well, and that will align the ECU to this vehicle and allow me to check it. And I'm going to leave that for half an hour. Well, it's not really 7:27. I'm 1 minute past. I reach down here in the darkness, pull out my special Toyota tool, Ta-da! That's my day done. It's getting dark out here. My animals need feeding, so I'll drive it tomorrow. Okay, and as we were talking, we've got transmission speed inputs into that plug there, and this one here we have the one from the body. Right, let me try to explain what's going on. We've got two speed inputs from the transmission, and they come up to the TCU, the transmission control unit, which is inside the ECU, which is the engine control unit. It's all in the same box, but they're actually separate modules within that box. And so we then have the TCU communicate to the ECU internally. And then we have that signal coming from the car back into the ECU, and that gets communicated back to the TCU internally. And at the same time, there's a multiplex signal, oh, this one's CAN bus, sorry, CAN bus signal going off to the dash and running around the vehicle. So these speed inputs, like the ABS needs speed, traction control, that's similar module, traction control, ABS on these ones, that needs that speed. The dash needs a speed. And so we've got these signals going around within the vehicle. I have got this other ECU in now. I programmed it last night. You saw me put that in there. And I found out something new because I accidentally unplugged it before turning the key off, and it still started the jumper cable, and it started. It worked. We're going to go for a drive and have my scan tool on. We're going to have a look and see about those 4 speeds again. The customer did leave me a note. Code P0500, vehicle speed sensor. No cruise control, doesn't set. Live data, no VSSS reading under PCM. Live data reading okay in ABS and TCM, so I can look at that as well. Transmission control module. Doesn't set fault code unless hard acceleration. Now that's an important point to me. That points a little bit as if it's a slipping transmission, and it's comparing the speeds happening inside the box. So that could be our clue right there. They've swapped the front and the rear speed sensors on the transmission, and they've measured them. They're both 650 ohms. I've got a video on checking the resistance of those transmission sensors, but they've already swapped them. They're doing all the right stuff. Again, trained Auto Sparky, they know what they're doing. AC voltage up to SPD plus SPD negative terminals on ECU. It's E22, E23. Yes, they are the correct terminals. So they've got that. Hence why it's with me to test the ECU, TCU, the engine control module, or we could call it the PCM, powertrain control module, which is actually a really, really good term for this particular fault, or this unit. Right, a couple more things to note. Different scan tools can give different readings, and that can cause problems as well. Now this car has actually got a little bit of a harsh shift just down low, and another reason I was putting this ECU and hoping to check it is this car's normally running a flashed ECU, and down low at very low speeds it's got a little bit of a funny shift. I don't think it's totally transmission. I think there's a little bit of engine, something going on, plugs, airflow meter, something like that. We've just done a cam belt. It was had it before the cam belt, and but it does it on this ECU. This is a stock standard ECU, and it does it as well. So I know it's not in the flash. I didn't think it was, but it's nice to confirm that. And this ECU is also a laser cruise, a radar cruise actually, and that cruise control sets just fine on this ECU, so that's working like it should. I know the screen's a bit funny, but we can see right there that we have all of our speeds as expected. We got the vehicle speed, we got the NT, we got the NO, so they're all working on this ECU. A little bit of a hard acceleration. Mexico's a little bit far for me to go, but we'll drop it off in Ks again. I'm going to drop down to 60 Ks and just accelerate it as hard as I can. And it's also really nice when I do this job because I'm comparing the reflashed ECU to the stock ECU, and this car goes good. Like, it goes really well, but you put a flashed ECU in, it goes really, really good. So I got another video on that, and I do a lot of these, reflash a lot of these. This one's without pops and bangs. There's no popcorn, and I actually prefer the no popcorn, but young guys do like a little bit of a burble, a little tiny bit of a on shift there. Okay, so at this point I'm fairly confident it's not the ECU, that there is a problem in the motor vehicle, in the crown that the Autosparky is working on. I'm going to go back to my house, back to my garage, and I'll give them a call, have a quick chat with them, and see if we can detective our way through and come up with a good solution. And what I'm doing here is I'm checking it as a Lexus GS430. Look at that. GS430, yep, we're looking good. Let's make it a 2005. Some thinking about this, and when I've got my own car, I can pop in and it will auto select different cars. Sometimes it'll do a GS, sometimes it'll do an LS430. The other thing I looked at is on my other scan tool, an LS430 has just a powertrain control module. On this little Foxwell, it's got a ECU and a TCU, or transmission and an engine modules. So I am just seeing right now if I can then look at the data as an engine and transmission, hopefully on this one. So I've attempted to go in, and we push OK, as a GS430, and it's going to say communication error. No communicating. That didn't work. Let's manually make it an LS430. I'm going to choose an LS430. I have started doing a bit of research to try and do some more diagnostic videos, and I'm finding that it's become a minefield of the fact that I can't teach experience. So just knowing that when you look at a scan tool that, hey, that data is not quite right, that information is not quite right, it makes it really, really tricky. Look at this. So I've got an LS430, I've got an engine, and I've got an ECT, which is electronically controlled transmission. And it lets me in. Now that's interesting, isn't it? Whether it will actually give me communications and give me that live data list. Look at that. Vehicle speed. So NO and NT. Okay. So what we've just done there, we've checked as a GS430, no communications, and then we've checked it as an LS430, and it does go in and it gives me two different modules, but it is showing vehicle speed under the engine control. So again, it's pointing back to a problem in the car, not this car, the other car. Now really quickly on the cruise control, you can have two ECUs with the same part number, but they run a different cruise control system in the car because the cruise control chip is a separate part of it. And I suspect they flashed it later on and they just wrote that chip in if the car had laser cruise. So be very careful there when you're swapping ECUs. I've been caught out. I'm okay with that. It's all part of learning. The ECU that is now in this car is also a radar cruise. Gorgeous day. Check that out. So I got a little picture there, and this might not mean much to a lot of guys, but the guys that know, that's the pulse from the speedo, from the cluster, from that cluster down to that ECU on the A plug. Well, it's actually, it depends on whether you go A plug or B plug, because there's different designations for different diagrams on these, which is, hey, more fun. I just thought I'd grab that pattern for the guy that's working with this ECU on that other car. We had a chat. I'm going to supply some diagrams too, because again, there's not a lot of information on these crowns, which makes it really tricky. If you own one and you try to fix it, there's limited guys that know about them, and so that can cause an issue. Working on this vehicle has followed the manual for checking P0500, P500 correctly. And we're working off the manuals of an LS430 or other common Toyotas at that time. And quite frankly, the information isn't complete, because the manufacturers write the manuals based upon a new vehicle, and they don't always predict everything, or they don't include all the information, unfortunately. We'll have a quick look at the fault code diagnosis sheet, and we'll see that it only covers the ones for the transmission. So I'm using the 2004 to 2006 LS430. That's the model years for the USDM cars. Of course, in other countries, we do see a 6-speed in 2003. And we see the LS430 begin in 2000, which is not the case in all countries. The later 6-speed has the SPD pin from the rest of the vehicle, so there's something else going on in there. We've proven that it's got to be something else in the rest of the car. Now, if you're watching this in my non-members one, we do actually have more information in my members videos. Okay, so guys who support me, I'm going to support them further with even more information. Just made another little change. You know, sometimes with diagnosis, it's a matter of finding something that's good, doing some testing to find out how something good reacts. I've just put it into cruise control. On cruise, and it's working fine. What I've done is I've just popped that speed signal from the dash down to the ECU, out of the ECU. Still measuring it over there with my scope, and looking at the scan tool, definitely no speed showing, vehicle speed showing in the computer. And we've just got it to throw a check light. So I was actually able to drive down the road for quite a period of time, and the check light didn't come on. And as soon as it does that, cruise control doesn't come on. So the light will come on the dash, but I can fiddle with this all I want, no setting. Let's see what codes we've got. So I had those 4 lines of data: engine speed, vehicle speed, NO and NT, and we just dropped that vehicle speed. Kind of points to where the problem may be, and it's going to be a P500, P0500. P0500. Now this is really helpful for guys if they're getting this code and they start changing all these sensors, okay, that there's more to it. It's not just for that vehicle speed sensor on the back of the box. Often it is, okay, a lot of times it is. But through the right process, we can come up with solutions and find more information. So when we come down to this, the short answer is there are some other conditions that it can be from that SPD wire. We could have a dash cluster issue. We could have something to do with the skid control ABS, or we could have something with the wiring in there. There's some joins, or someone may have tried to put like a speed cut defender or other devices on that speed line, causing issues. That's what we're going to be looking for. And just again, reminder guys, if you want even more information, check out my members one. Guys who support me, I'm going to support them further with more information. I think I've got everything I need. I've got... Did I get a photo of that? So what I've proven is, one, the ECU is fine. 2, the customer who's got the ECU that this car's driving on has proven that it's probably not the gearbox speed sensors, and it's probably not a stuffed gearbox. I thought it could have been a slipping transmission, that it's possibly in the wiring up to the dash, or there's a junction where it splits off and it goes to the traction control ECU, the skid control. So it could well be in that area. There could be that junction that's had a little rat chew on it, or it's damaged, or someone's been in there and done something weird, or someone's put like a speed cut defender in it. So there's awesome options. I'm going to pop the flashed ECU back in, but I was just talking to the customer, and he told me that he could drive his car, and then it was with a burst of acceleration, and I was able to duplicate that when I accelerated off before. So it definitely points to the fact that it's highly likely that it's that wire that's causing the problem in this other car. Now, other suggestions that he made, because of course he is an Auto Sparky professional and he knows what he's on about, is variable speed volume for the radio. I don't know if these have that in this car, because again, there's that information void with crowns, and when they do have a problem, it can be tricky to find. However, we've certainly made some progress today with solving this problem. So if you do have a P0500, and not just crowns, LS430s, please don't assume totally it's with the transmission. Generally it is, but if there is a possibility of other things. To find what else is going on, sometimes we have to revert, or we have to alter to other similar cars which are having this fault. Fortunately, Toyota do have other cars, so if I've looked in other models and other car options, then I'm able to find a little bit more about the diagnosis to show you guys, because I can't always just pull out what's in my head and go in there and have a look. Right, just to back up a little bit, what I've just been saying, and if we look at Lexus possible causes for a P0500 using the old Google machine, faulty speed sensor, yep. Speed sensor harnesses, yep. Electrical connection, yep. Faulty combination meter, but it doesn't say anything about the combination meter. In the very first opening when I said P0500, that doesn't come up at all. And a faulty ECM, oh, of course, but of course, in the video we've proved that it isn't that, because it runs perfectly fine in another car. See what else I can find on the old Google machine. This one's fantastic, and this is what I'm talking about. We've got a bit of a description here, and then it's got the pulses from the skid machine to the combination to the pulses to the ECM. Oh, look at that. P0500. No SPD, speed sensor. Signal what the ECM detects. NC, transmission counter gear signal more than 300 RPM. So what it's saying there is if it's not getting the SPD into the ECU while the engine is running and moving at more than 300 RPM, then it may throw a code. And the park neutral switch has to be off. So it's somewhere else other than park and neutral, which if you're driving it down the road in park and neutral, it's probably bad. Okay, and we've got here open and short in speed sensor circuit, speed sensor, combination meter, ECM, skid control ECU. Certainly shows that there's more to it. And this is just to back up what I'm saying. This, of course, is for a different model, which sometimes we need to revert to when the proper one, the proper information for the proper vehicle doesn't exist or is wrong. And there we go. Here's some other codes. The monitor will not run when any of these DTCs are not present, which is interesting. So, of course, different cars will throw different codes based on different information, and you'll also have ones where they'll override a code if another code is present, and that catches guys out with diagnosis, and I'm going to try and work on helping guys with that as well. Right, I think that proves the point of what I was just saying. As far as the other faults, as I just mentioned, an intermittent wheel speed sensor or a dirty wheel speed sensor could do it, and it could just drop out momentarily, just for fun, to throw that code. Okay, it could just be a tiny glitch. So the Sparkies are going to have to, I suspect, scope them, capture them, and then play it back when it can do it. But you can make it do it so easily, and so they can replicate it very, very quickly, and theirs will do it at 50 kilometers per hour. Hopefully we'll do an update on this one, because I'd really like to know what was actually wrong with it. So keep an eye out in the description. If I've put it in there, I'll put it in the description if I've done an update. If I haven't, we will be still waiting for it. So that's me done. I've got other things to do now. Flash DC's back in. This car's a cool car. I really like it. Really, really cool. And with the flash DCU, it's pretty fast. So hope that's been helpful. We'll do it again soon. We'll catch you later.